Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar today about listening. I am Jean Balfour. I can see I know many of you on the call today, but also really lovely to see some new names and people I haven't met before. Today's webinar is really to help us focus on listening and think about how well we are listening. It's very participative. There's plenty of opportunity to participate, and I'll share with you in a little while how we can do that. So let's just look at where we have people who have signed up for today. We've had really a global audience today, people from Switzerland and Luxembourg, South Africa, Australia, Dubai, a lot of people here from Singapore and the Philippines and China. So welcome, many of you early in the morning. I know those of you in Dubai, it's 8:30. Those of you in Europe, it's 5:30 or 6:30. Those of you in Australia, it's a bit later in the day. So welcome. We're all of us in different stages of our journey on a Thursday today. As many of you know, we are an ICF accredited coach training company, and that is our primary business. As well as that, we teach coaching skills to leaders and we provide executive coaching. And today really covers all of those areas because we're really thinking about how well we listen, and this covers all of our lives in many different places and ways. So what we're going to cover is we're going to think about how can we listen more deeply to each other, and I'm going to teach you some skills and some ways of doing that. We're going to think about the importance of patience and also ease. So by that I mean really taking the hurry out of our days and our listening, and we'll look at a few listening tools. The other thing that we will do is we have kindly Ayaka has agreed to be a coaching client, and we will do a live coaching session today. Just a few things about working with Zoom. For today, the chat, the voice and video is not enabled, but you can communicate with me in two different ways and with the rest of the group in one way. So if you'd like to use the chat, please do. Even now, you could just type in your first name and where you are, and thanks Kirsty and Noni and Aline and Michael for doing that, and Lisita. And make sure that you send the chat to all panelists and attendees if you want other people to see it, otherwise only Ayako and I see it. And then you can also send a private question in the Q&A box. The other way that we can participate today is via the chat. So I'm going to introduce our first, via the poll, introduce our first poll. And this is really asking you the question, how would you describe yourself as a listener? Now, the polls are anonymous, so nobody else can see where it goes, but it would be great if you could say where you are, and then I will share the poll results. So I'm seeing a real spread of it, and thanks for so many of you voting in the poll. It makes really interesting sharing. So I'll just leave it running for a couple more seconds. So I'll end it now and share the results. So what you can see here is that a few of you are saying, yep, I'm good. I've really learned to do this well. And that is a wonderful gift, I think, for people. Quite a few people saying, yeah, I'm good. Biggest number of people saying I'm okay, and a couple of people saying I'm not very good. And actually, I think one of the key points about this is I think that we see listening as a really a core life skill, but actually for many of us, we have to learn it. It doesn't actually come naturally. For me, even for me, I'm a real people person. And I remember when I first embarked on a journey of learning to listen better, I was quite shocked by how bad I was really at listening. Let's try the second poll. And this is about your own experience of feeling listened to at work. So if you think about your working life, how often do you feel really listened to? So feeling like you're heard, is it every day, a few times a week, a few times a month, or hardly ever? And this is really key because this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about how can we listen to each other more effectively in the workplace. So just leave the poll up for five more seconds, and then I'll close it and share the results. So here we go. So what we're seeing is that actually some of you are really feeling listened to every day, and that means that's great. You're working with colleagues and leaders who are really focused on listening, and some of you saying, a few times a week, but quite a few of you also saying hardly ever and a few times a month. And I think we all hold a responsibility to learn to listen more effectively so we can help to improve this. And today is all about that. So let me just go on and do our next exercise. So if you think about somebody who's a good listener, what is it that they do? So if you could type into the chat, when you really feel heard, especially for those of you who are feeling heard every day, what is it that the people who are really listening to you are doing? So if you could find the chats and just type those in. And so I'll read some of them out because they're going to the panelists. So no judgment. Yes, they repeat what you said. They offer advice. They do not interrupt. Yes, a great lesson for all of us. What else? They demonstrate empathy. They're connected. They reiterate back what you've heard, and they're present. There's something about that felt presence, isn't there? They listen with intent. They're not distracted. They use good eye contact. They take action on requests, so you know you're heard because they follow up. They listen without needing to fix it. Yeah, that's really important. They use good body language, so open body language showing they're listening. They manage distractions. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. And they have ease. Yeah, so there's a sense and no judgment. So we're holding that. Yeah. So we all know it. We know when we're being listened to, because all of these things are the things that we teach on our programs. And yet somehow we're not all doing it well ourselves, and we're not always experiencing this in the workplace. So Rachel Naomi Remen, who teaches nursing, described listening as this: the most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we ever give each other is our attention. A loving silence often has far more power to heal and to connect than the most well-intentioned words. And I think this is so true. If you think about the times that you feel listened to, it's really about presence. Somebody mentioned presence there. It's that feeling that somebody's given me their full attention, that they're really offering me the space so I can think something through. And one of the ways that I think about this is that listening is actually very active. It's not passive at all. It's not something that we just sit back and do. It's proactive, it's intentional. We have to make it happen. In order to be really good listeners, we have to be very intentional about how we do it and when we do it. And really, it is like a muscle. My own experience is that I really had to work on it so that it was something that I did by default instead of having to be aware of it. And so we have to really develop it in that way. So let me share with you a few of the key principles of listening. Well, the first really obvious one is stop talking. And this may seem really straightforward, but actually the truth is that often we're listening, we're waiting just to come in and to comment, and we don't leave enough space and enough time. We do exercises on our program and inviting people to just listen without saying anything for up to 2 or 3 minutes. And the level of discomfort in the listener is quite high because we're so used to jumping in. It also requires us to relax, to focus on the person and to give them our full attention. And that means tuning out, worrying about lunch or dinner. It really is about giving them their attention. It's also about removing distractions or tuning out the distractions. I had one coaching client I was seeing here in Singapore, and we were meeting in a very noisy cafe at her request. And there was it was really a lot of noise going on around us. There was drilling, and then the fire alarm went off. And I said to her, how are you? You know, should we go somewhere else? And she said, no, you are really giving me your full attention. And so I'm not distracted. So the distractions can be as much about the way we pay attention to people as to whether they are there. It requires us to be patient, to allow the other person to speak, allow them space to think, and allow them the space to kind of go through what it is that they're processing. It requires us to avoid judgment. Instead of listening and thinking, well, I wouldn't do that, it requires us to just suspend that and really listen. Because as soon as we've got those noises of, well, that doesn't seem like a good idea, or I think you should do this, going on in our head, we've stopped listening. We're listening to our own view of the other person's perspective. We're not listening to what could be going on. It also requires us to be curious so that we can see, we can be curious about what's happening for that person, and that kind of helps make listening a bit easier. That's basically it. You can, and then finally, it's about listening to hear first and respond second. And so we're so tempted often when we're listening to jump in, to be listening for, oh, when can I talk about that? And actually, it requires us to suspend that. So this is a video I've showed before in my webinars, but we're going to do an exercise with this. And the first time, we're just going to watch the video and enjoy it. It's only a minute, so it's just under 60 seconds. So I'm going to share this video and just see what you see and enjoy it. And I would argue that this is a triumph of democracy.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me.
That's right, carry on.
It still makes
My
me laugh.
apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
Okay, I'm going to pause the video here. What I'm going to do now is replay it. And this time I'm giving you a particular exercise and activity. What I'd like you to do this time is put all of your attention on this man, on him, and see what you notice. Look out for things like facial expressions, his own body language, words he's using. What might be going on for him? Maybe sit in his shoes. Try and tune out what's going on around him and see if you can give him your full attention. And what we're curious in here is what's different when we do that. So I'll go back to the beginning and just play it again, and then we'll type into the chat and see what was different this time. So just give him your full attention.
I would argue that this is a triumph of democracy. Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me.
That's right, carry on.
My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there and ask you now just to type into the chat, what did you notice was different when you really made an active effort just to give your attention to him? And so maybe did you notice some different things about him? What did you see? So yeah, somebody's saying he seemed a little annoyed. So we could kind of sense his annoyance. He closes his eyes. Yeah, and I didn't notice that before. His facial expression we see. He really wanted to laugh, really, I think so. I felt his anger. He lost his words. He wasn't focused in his speech. He was distracted. He paused. He got thrown off when he had to start. He looks more tense. So this is wonderful, rich information that we're getting from him. We are seeing that we can see all of him. We can see much more of him when we give him our full attention and tune out that. Yeah, so people are saying, you know, we can see his sense of embarrassment. And really, this is what we're talking about with listening. What we're wanting to do is to learn to tune out that noise and give our full attention to the person in front of us. And what you were saying was that you could see that by doing that, you get to see a lot more of what's going on for him. And really, this is what listening is about. This is what good listening is about. It's really giving our full attention to the person in front of us. So on our program, we talk about this happening in 3 different ways. We talk about levels of listening. And one of the levels is about really just listening to the words. what the person is saying. And actually, it's interesting that when you were describing your listening, then you weren't talking about what he was saying at all, actually. But we are listening first and foremost to that. We're listening to the words, maybe metaphors, maybe pictures the person's talking about. But we're also listening beyond that. We're listening to and noticing body language, for example, or facial expressions, or shifting movements. Or we might listen beyond words to perhaps something that the person is saying that's saying, well, I don't feel confident about this. So we're listening beyond that. And the third level that we're listening for is listening actually to ourselves on many levels. It's like a kind of, we call it a meta listening. So I'm also noticing myself, I'm noticing my reactions, I'm noticing when I'm listening and when I'm not. So I keep pulling myself back to the person. I might also just be aware of intuitions and things that I might have, but I am constantly coming back to listen to the other person as well. And I'm aware of myself actively as a listener in that space. So what is it that we're listening for then? Well, we're listening for emotions quite often. I think in the workplace, we're usually listening for, have you got a solution for this? Or do you know what to do about that? We're listening for the practical things. But actually, really effective listeners are listening a little bit beyond that. Because if somebody comes up with a question about, what should I do about a client? It's very easy just to say, well, you could do this and this. But actually, they might be sharing some concerns they've got either about the client or about their ability to deal with the client, but they're not doing that in a kind of proactive, practical way. And so as a listener, we're listening out for that. We're listening for those different things, energy shifts, the self-beliefs, opportunities that they have, ideas. We're really listening to the whole person and what it is that they can be sharing. So really, when we're listening, we're paying our full attention to the whole person. I just want to say a little bit here about eye contact and our own body language, because people raise that. And eye contact is actually really important, and it's also culturally specific. And I believe that we can listen really, really effectively without eye contact. And I know this because I sometimes do phone coaching. And so I can't see the person and they can't see me, but they know that I'm listening. That person knows whether I'm listening because I'm paying my full attention. And maybe I'm saying to them, I notice you just sounded like your breathing sped up, or you started speaking more quickly then, or whatever it is. I can be really listening to that person sharing their story without eye contact. So eye contact is very important, and we can listen without it. Some coaches do walking coaching. So they will coach somebody while they're walking beside them. And that when we're doing that, we don't have eye contact, but we're still paying really good attention. So just quickly to say, there are some barriers that stop us listening. Probably one of the ones that gets in the way is that we think we know what they're going to say. I had a conversation with somebody this week and I started telling the story and this person finished my sentences. And actually, it can feel a bit like, wow, you really think you know what I'm saying, and I'm saying something different. But we do this a lot. Nancy Klein, who I've done a lot of training with, just talks about interruption being such a bad thing, finishing people's sentences. So we do that, and we want to jump in. We let our mind drift off. This is really human nature. We know from the neuroscience that our brains are constantly drifting off, and this is why listening is an act. It's something we have to proactively do and bring our minds back constantly to the other person and be aware of that. We might have things going on for us, which we have to learn to sit with and tune out. We might be worried about something. We might be hungry, hot, cold, whatever else is going on. And we can either sort that out. If I'm cold and I'm in a room with somebody, chances are they're cold. Let's get warm before we can listen. But other times it may be that we have to sit with our discomfort, notice it, and then let it go and give our attention to the other person. There's also things that are noises or interruptions that can stop us. But as I've said, I think we can tune those out if we give our attention to the other person really fully. And then the final thing I want to just share on this piece is that I believe that silence is a really key part of listening. So many people think they might even close their eyes. I noticed I closed my eyes then. They might close their eyes to think something through, or if somebody turns their head away, either way, and you see them doing this, just let them carry on thinking. The chances are that they just need you to listen and be present with them while they're thinking in their head. And silence can feel really uncomfortable, but we see in coaching particularly, but also with leaders, that it can be very powerful. So this wonderful thing, I think, of how important it is that we provide empathy and these descriptions of it. I think often it's hard for us to work out what empathy is and how can we see it. So that here's what Brené was talking about. She said that the 4 ways we can demonstrate empathy is that we stand in the other person's shoes, we take their perspective, we hold a non-judgmental perspective, so we don't judge whatever's going on for the other person, we hold them and listen to them. We recognize the emotion and then we communicate that. So we acknowledge that there is emotion there and we communicate it. So empathy really for me goes hand in hand with really high quality listening, because unless we're doing both of them together, then I think we're kind of holding back. We're not stepping into the act of listening. And the last piece I want to talk about is just summarizing, and this is a very simple skill and trick. When somebody says something to you, you can summarize or just reflect back and say, so what I heard you say was X, Y, Z, and have I understood that correctly? And in many ways, and some of you said this in the chat earlier, this is one of the things that we know somebody's listening to us if they reflect back, if they acknowledge that they've heard us because they've reflected back what it was that we were saying. Okay, so what I want to do now is demonstrate, hopefully, some coaching in this space. I'm saying hopefully for me, and just to let you know that we're stopping the recording now. What is it that you saw me doing? And I noticed somebody said that maybe you couldn't see me all the time because of the gallery view. So I hope you managed to see that. But we're not providing observations on Ayako, we're providing observations on me. So somebody's typed in here, notice Jean smiling, calm, picked up on aversion. Yeah, so listening for words and looking at that. I've got people saying nodding, open questions, pause and recap, repeating back, holding virtual eye contact. Yeah, try to do that as much as ever. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to solve things, just really listening for what the person is, because I hold that they hold the solutions for themselves. Yes, so allowing a bit of silence, listening for emotions or blocks maybe, and yes, a few people saying not advising. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the chats. Yeah, exploring issues to get to the bottom of it. So rarely is something solved by the kind of simple, quick conversation. Sometimes it is at work, you know, how do I fill in my timesheet? Let me help you think about that. It's quite straightforward, but if it's something we've been putting off doing, it's worth exploring with people. What is it at that? Yeah, so also thinking about silence and space, and thinking about strong words. So I hope you can see here as an example of really how we can listen to people. And it does require, I mean, I noticed myself thinking, oh my goodness, I'm doing this in front of people, and having to bring myself back and really give Ayako my full attention. And that requires an act. And so it comes back to this piece, which I really believe, and that's that coaching is a strong act, and it's something we do very proactively. So we've got some time now if you have any questions that you would like to ask about what we've covered, but I'm intrigued now to ask this last question about which of the things that we've covered today might you think about doing. So which of those skills might you try today when you go back to your work and thinking about what you're doing for the rest of the day? And then if anybody's got any questions about listening, please do type them into the chat. I'll just put the poll up there, or you can use the Q&A box if that's easier for you. Just wait another couple of seconds. Yeah, so somebody's saying, asking a question, really, really powerful question. Let me just share these results. So how do you deal with situations when you're concentrating on something and someone comes up to you and just starts talking? I find it very difficult to switch instantly and focus on the person. I prefer if people can schedule time but others may perceive me as unapproachable. So thanks for sharing that. I think that that is something that's really true. So in a way, if we book time with somebody and we're sitting down with them, it's really easy to listen. But if they do a flyby past our desk, or they send a chat and they say, can you just talk to me now? I need it. It's like we have to suspend what we're doing and move and talk to the other person. So I've got a couple of simple things that I can say here. One is actually to acknowledge that and say to the person, I'd really like to give you my full attention. Would you mind if you just gave me another 10 minutes and then I'll come and find you and we'll talk then. So you're acknowledging that you want to give them your attention, but that you can't do it right now. And that you're just saying, yeah, really happy to have a conversation. And then you do that. You go and find them and you have the chat with them. So you become consistent in them knowing that. The other thing is that if they think that if you think that they might need you right in that space, it's maybe just buying 10 seconds, making a note of where you're up to, and then just breathing. So become present in yourself so that you can give them that time. But I think people will respect this idea that you want to give them your full attention. You want to really listen, and that means that you just need to finish what you're doing now. And so you're actually respecting them, I think, in that space. I have another question that says, how can you be empathic and still maintain your own balance? Sometimes it's possible to take in and feel negative situations that affect yourself as a listener long after the conversation. Very true. And we hear people talking about empathy fatigue and decision fatigue and compassion fatigue, in fact, because we're doing it a lot. Well, I think it's first of all holding a mindset that these are other people's situations and they're not ours to solve. Our job is to listen and to help them solve it. We can't possibly solve everybody's challenges or solutions. And so part of it is learning to see that. And I know for me, I'm a very empathic person. And when I first started coaching, listening to people, I would do that, take a lot of responsibility. Sometimes now I think I've got a bit cool because I will be very empathic, but I still really hold that it's for them, it's theirs. Now, if I get really caught up, I go and talk to somebody, I find a supervisor or somebody I respect who I can talk to and say, I'm carrying this person with me. Can you help me put it down or help me work out whether I need to help them in some way? So I get a trusted advisor really to help me with that. Another question, what do you do when the client has not found any access or for themselves? Do you lead them to a place and putting your own solution in? Yes, if you've really done some good thinking and you've worked with them and they're still very stuck, I would gently say, ask permission. You know, I've got a couple of ideas. How would you feel about me sharing these ideas? And then I would just gently share them. I hold non-attachment to my own ideas. They're mine. They may not work for the person. Sometimes doing that stimulates the other person to come up with some ideas themselves. It kind of gets the ball rolling. You can use a whiteboard or you can put ideas on post-it notes. Sometimes that externalizes them. You can play with them. You can do pros and cons. As long as you don't feel attached to your idea, except in situations at work where you need to be, but you know, then that's really important. Somebody else has asked, what if they have not considered an option and you're familiar with them? So same thing, how do you listen without dishing out advice, but still offer the perspective? So you wait until they've thought it through and then perhaps say at the end, you know, actually that there is another perspective. If they're really going down a wrong path, particularly if that path is you know, going against company policy, actually it's important that we say that in organizations. And you know, I have also done that. I've known when people have been talking about something that actually was going to be a bit detrimental to. So it's been really great to be with you all here today. Just a small plug for our program. Our next cohort's starting on the 1st of July. And as many of you know, because many of you are friends and family on the call today, our program is really about coaching at work and has a lot of practice. So we do a lot of practice like we've done today in this environment. I would really particularly like to say thank you to AACO for being so open and willing to be with me on the session today. And we will work out the recording and send you a version of the recording in the newsletter, which will come out tomorrow. Please feel free to share that. It will also be available on our YouTube channel. So thanks very much for joining us today. Wish you all a good rest of your day, whatever time of day it is for you, wherever you are. Thank you.